Hello, ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome back. This is Force, and here today I would like to talk with you about the Elder Scrolls Online Tamriel Unlimited Console Edition. I spent a little bit of time this afternoon playing the game. I did a live stream. I've played a bunch with my friends today and yesterday, and I wanted to sort of take some time to collect my thoughts. I kind of struggled for a little bit in terms of what I wanted to do for a video for the console release. I actually first thought I'd make like a tips video for the new players, but I've already made tips videos. Like, they're on the internet. In fact, they're getting a bunch of views now as people search for tips and hints for the console release of the game. So I don't want to repeat that content, but I still wanted to talk about the game because I've been playing the game a lot recently, and well, frankly, that's just what I do here. I talk about what I'm interested in and what I'm playing at the moment. Now, a lot of this will be pretty repetitive. I tend to do that anyways, but more so if you have watched my ESO content in the past. I'm going to be saying some similar things as to what I've talked about before. Background gameplay is just going to be some straight up uncut console gameplay footage from my play sessions over the past couple of days. So let's just get things started. Let's get right out of the way. First of all, it's the same game. What else would we expect? It is the Elder Scrolls Online that you may have known from the PC version recently or even from launch. It's that same game with some improvements. They've of course added additional content. There's been the addition of the justice system. There's been addition and changes to what the end game is. There's also been improvements to the bugs, and there's been fixes to combat. They've worked and specifically addressed trying to fix the combat's quote floatiness. That's actually one of the things that I brought up initially when the game first launched and when it was in beta. I said, look, this is great, the Elder Scrolls universe. I like it. You've got your storytelling. You've got a lot of cool systems in here. The class system I think is fantastic. One of my favorite class systems in MMOs in recent memory, just because of the diversity and the different things that you can do. But the combat, it's a little off. It feels a little floaty. It doesn't feel too impactful. Part of that is a consequence simply of their chosen combat system, which is the soft lock targeting. We look at the different things. There's straight up action combat. There is like the physics ragdoll based combat that we saw in the single player Elder Scrolls games. There's tab targeting systems that you see in games like World of Warcraft. And then there's these hybrid systems, and people do sort of different takes on them. But this soft lock system really, unfortunately, I think it's one of those things where you can only do so much with it because it's not going to ever feel super impactful like the straight up action combat games, like the physics based combat games that you have in Skyrim, for example. It will never be quite like that, but it's also not quite tab targeting. It's this weird combination of the two. And, every time I talk about the combat in this game, I do see a lot of people get very defensive. I don't hate it. I don't think it's like the worst thing ever, but it's definitely not my favorite combat that I've played in games. But it's okay. It's all right. It's not awful, but I don't think it's great either. And you might be rolling your eyes right now saying, Force, you just keep saying this over and over again whenever you mention ESO. Well, to be fair, I told you at the start of this video that this might be a little repetitive if you've heard my thoughts on ESO in the past. So let's talk about specifically the console version of the game, because that's what we're here to talk about. I'd like to start off with the positive here. The controls feel great. I love how this game plays on a controller, and it seems rather intuitive that this would be the case because the way the combat is, and that you're basically moving a crosshair and lining your crosshairs up with an enemy and then firing your abilities, but you don't need pinpoint precision like you would in certain like FPS games. The mouse isn't as necessary, so the combat feels really good. I think they've done a great job of mousing it to the gamepad, and I think it plays pretty well. It's taken a little while to get used to because there are a few skills that require you a combination of hitting multiple buttons at once. Like, for example, to activate your ultimate ability, you need to hit both left and right bumper at the same time. Problem being that both left and right bumper are also mapped to individual skills. So sometimes I'll go to hit my ultimate, and maybe it's just because I suck, that could very well be it, but sometimes I'll go to hit my ultimate and I'll end up hitting my left bumper first by like a millisecond, and then it ends up casting that spell instead of my own. So there's a little bit of clunkiness there, simply due to the nature of the controller has a lot less total inputs than a keyboard has, of course. There's only so many buttons on a controller, whereas a keyboard has many, many more options. So for that reason, there's some slight clunkiness there, but overall, the movement of your character and most of the combat, I would say, with the exception of that finicky, you know, using multiple actions for single buttons, that can be a little bit messy. Like another example is the interaction and jumping button are on the they're bound to the same thing. So sometimes you'll walk up to an object you want to loot, and instead of looting it, you'll jump in the air. So, I mean, that's not what you're looking to do, and it makes you look like an idiot on top of it. So the controller overall, I do like it. Again, I like the way it feels with a little bit of exceptions. Game doesn't look as good as the PC, which I suppose that's to be expected. I'm currently playing on the Xbox One because that's the version that all of my close friends ended up getting, because that's the system that they have. I did end up playing the console beta on the PlayStation 4, and if memory serves me correctly, it looked a little bit better on the PS4. So if you have that choice between playing on the PS4 or the Xbox One, if visuals matter to you, it looks a little bit better on the PS4 from what I recall. And if visuals really matter to you, well then why aren't you just playing it on the PC? Let's be honest here, that's how things go. So yeah, looks a little bit dulled down. I do believe that both console versions are also locked at 30 FPS, but it is pretty smooth. The frame rate from all of the hours that I've played, I would say over the past few days, I'm anywhere in the vicinity of 8 to 10 hours with the console version of this game. It's been smooth all throughout, except for in major towns. And that FPS lag is probably less to do with what's going on and more to do with the amount of people that are there. Well, although I suppose those are one and the same. As time goes on and things smooth out and we don't have the entire player base, the entire population for the most part, all in these one towns, and it spreads out, and people who play more hardcore are in higher levels, and people who go a little bit slower are in those low to medium levels. I think we'll run into that problem a little bit less, but I was very, very happy to see that even though it is a locked 30, the frame rate is smooth, it's butter, it's great, like no problems but those towns. There has been a little bit of glitchiness, and it's kind of tough because with the launch of MMOs, we've sort of grown accustomed to them not working right away, right? This is like an industry standard at this point. Like, we are used to it. If we have got a massively multiplayer game with numerous people connecting online at the same time, it is usually the case the first week to 2 weeks for those types of games are utter trash. And I say that, you know, knowing that it's not necessarily acceptable, but it's to the point where I get why it's happening and we're used to it. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't like it to change. I would love for MMOs to start launching and to be absolutely smooth. That would be great. It's just not happening, and it's not necessarily happening here. There's a little bit of hitchiness. I've had some invisible NPCs that I had to relaunch the application in order to see again. I've just had random crashes, like zoning into a little mini dungeon. I crashed straight to the Xbox dashboard. Like, that sort of thing sucks. That is rather unfortunate. Their implementation and the adjustments that they've made to the UI has overall been pretty positive as well. There's a little bit of clunkiness in just the mass volume when it comes to dealing with your inventory or going through your skill tree. There's just so much to look at, and the list is huge, and you're scrolling down forever. Unless they basically just started getting rid of skill trees and getting rid of a lot of the items that you loot in the game for the console version specifically, they were going to run into this problem regardless, because when you make a console game, font has to be bigger because typically people sit farther away from the screen when they're playing a console as opposed to when they're playing a game on PC, and you have to keep in mind that you don't have that mouse, so you need to make the game's UI available to navigate with that gamepad. So you sort of run into that issue either way. I don't know if there was a better way they could have gone about this, but the list do get a little bit long once more just due to the sheer volume of stuff. With all that stuff said, I'm still having a good time, and this is sort of the same situation I find myself in with the launch of the PC version of ESO. Now, to reiterate things that I've said in the past, I put 300 to 400 hours into the PC version of the game, To some people, well, because it's an MMO, that means you basically didn't play, but honestly, if you really sit down and think about it, that is a lot of time, and I overall enjoy the experience. The main reason I actually stopped playing ESO was because none of my real friends were playing. I ended up getting to endgame, and yeah, I made friends in the game itself. I made some digital friends. They're real people, but I know them digitally. They're not people that are made of freaking binary. So I made some friends online, but it's not quite the same. I think anyone would agree. When you have real life friends, people you grew up with, people you went to school with, people you work with, there's a different connection there, and it's always nice to play with those people. That was the main reason I stopped playing ESO, and now I'm in this interesting position where a lot of my real life friends that I went to school with, that I grew up with, are coming to the game for the first time on the console, and it sort of reinvigorated it for me. You know, every time I hop into this game, I am always sort of struck by the art. I love the way the world looks. A little bit diminished, of course, since I'm playing on the Xbox One, because graphically it doesn't look as good, but the number of polygons and sort of how clear those textures are don't necessarily take away from the artistic direction, and that's one of the main things I really like about this game. Some really nice set pieces, some really nice scenery, some really nice environments. It would be nice if the draw distance was a little better so we could see further into the distance, but that is once more just a limitation of the hardware. The launch week, as I talked about earlier, it's been a little rough, beyond the weird bugginess like invisible NPCs forcing me to relog and a crash. There's only one actual desktop crash, so I don't want to make you think that that's happening nonstop. And I've actually only had one instance as well of dealing with invisible NPCs. It hasn't been a persistent issue. The real issue has been the servers and trying to play basically during peak hours. You know, derp to me, that's obviously going to be the hardest time to play, but the queue times have been pretty insane. Once more, it's just one of those situations where game companies either aren't or can't rent out or purchase servers for those first couple of weeks. I don't know exactly what the limitation is. I think it changes depending on the developer. I think it changes depending on who you ask. It's my understanding that renting servers is a possibility, although it's a little bit more difficult when you're talking about running a game on those servers, and you're talking about the fact that you want those servers to be absolutely positively secure so that no one's hacking your game and ruining the experience for other people. When it comes to temporary servers, that can certainly cause some issues. But either way, we're just presented once again with the fact that this is an online game. First couple of weeks are painful because of connectivity things and because of potential bugs, but then one of the big things is, of course, because of queue times, and queue times is something that I've been running into, and that's been rather annoying. But overall, the gameplay, it's the same game. It's, you know whether or not you enjoy it. You know, if you played the beta of the console, if you played the beta of the PC, if you played PC at release, you know whether or not you enjoy ESO. Not enough has fundamentally changed to sway you one way or the other. There's been slight improvements, there's been bug fixes, there's been new content since the PC launch, but it's still the same game ultimately. And as I talked about over a year ago, it's an overall enjoyable experience for me. And I'm liking it on the console so far, so I just sort of wanted to pass that along. I wanted to show you guys some gameplay. If you caught my stream, I answered a bunch of questions, and if you're looking for like tips and hints and guide videos, I put up a bunch of those way back during the initial launch of the PC version, and all of that stuff you can Google, or why don't you just search on YouTube while you're here, ESO tips. Basically, if you just type that in, I'm sure you're bound to see a ton of my videos at the top of the page. Those have been getting a lot of views recently. So there you go. That's that. Some of my initial thoughts on the first couple of days here of the console version of the game, and also sort of recapping a lot of the stuff that I talked about today while live streaming. I wanted to sort of consolidate my thoughts and put it out there in video form. So there you go. It's the same game. You like it or you don't. I overall think it's pretty decent. It's really nice that there's no sub fee anymore. There's a lot more content than there was during the launch of the PC, and right now I'm enjoying it, so I'm going to keep trucking through, playing it with my friends, and I will keep you updated, so stay tuned for that. Thanks guys so much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic afternoon. I'll see you later.